Good morning, sim racers and sim drifters. It's Chris Wolf here, and today is a very exciting day. Today I get to offer you my full review of the M10 10Nm direct drive wheel from Simagic Dynamic. So I've had the product for a couple weeks now, and a couple weeks before that the company reached out to me and said they were interested in offering me a discount on a unit in exchange for a review. So I'm a little wary of these agreements because sometimes there's the implication that the reviewer is obligated to speak positively on the product. So I voiced these concerns and said I would give my honest opinion, but I would not promise that it would be positive, and they were on board with that. So I said, go ahead, sure. So I paid for my unit. They shipped it within a week. I got it about 4 days later. I was up and running in about 10 minutes, which was very impressive for a direct drive, because from all the research that I've done, normally direct drives take quite a bit of fine-tuning to get feeling good. I just punched in the settings that Tyler recommended and was drifting within 10 minutes, like I said. So that's a big plus. So let's start by getting into the pros and cons of the wheel. So first off, the pros is materials. The materials this machine is built out of are extremely impressive. This wheel is very heavy, very substantial. It wouldn't be out of place in a real race car. The quick release that they use is the same as the D1 cars, and is compatible with some quick releases from real cars. So you might have a quick release wheel at home that you could just pop right onto this without even having to unscrew it. If you do not, you can unscrew this faceplate and screw any wheel you want into this base. So that would give you access to your paddle shifters, all of your toggle switches and buttons. They would all work with pretty much any rim that you want to put on there. So I like the flexibility there. Also, for build quality, it has no fan, which seemed strange to me, but the way it was explained to me is the reason you would need a fan in a direct drive wheel is similar to why you would want water cooling or air cooling on a overclocked PC component. So if you're asking more out of it than it is designed to give, then you're going to want to cool it, because that's going to generate quite a lot of heat. But if you're operating well within spec, it's not going to be generating an excess of heat that you would need a fan to combat. In my testing, this has been true. I've used it for hours on end. I've cranked it up as high as it'll go, and every time I've reached over and touched the base, it's felt cool to the touch. And that's very impressive. Another perk to having no fan is it's completely silent. I'll overlay a video of that, but you can barely hear this thing, apart from when it's spinning, which is really a nice departure from belt-driven wheels that often have a very noisy fan. So again, with build quality, it includes mounting hardware and mounting brackets, which I was very impressed with. They're a nice gauge of steel, they're quite thick, and they're drilled out for many different angles and options, so you can mount this thing in all sorts of different ways. The sides are cut the same way as an aluminum extrusion tubing cockpit, so any hardware that you would have to mount things to an 80/20 cockpit, you'll be able to use it on this as well. It's just the standard slot and groove T-joints, so you'd be able to attach button boxes to the side, mount this in all sorts of creative ways, maybe mount a handbrake to the side of it if that was an angle that worked for you. It's very flexible in that respect. Also, the quality of the quick release, like this thing is extremely sturdy. With all of my other wheels, whenever I had people over to use my cockpit, I always had to warn them not to put their weight on the wheel, not to use it while they're adjusting their seat, to pull themselves forwards and backwards. All of those things tend to be very hard on plastic belt-driven wheels, but I had people over for New Year's Eve, and there was beers flowing, and there was people using this thing, and they were stumbling, leaning on it, and I wasn't worried for a second. This thing just took it like a champ. Everything on it is full automotive grade. Wasn't worried about it in the slightest. So now let's move on to the rim. It has a lot of buttons that you can see here. It has 4 normal buttons, 2 dials, and each of those is also a button if you click it in. And then it has this toggle switch on the side, which counts as 2 buttons, one for up and one for down. And then this toggle switch on the right, this one is very interesting. Sorry, my right, your left. Anyway, this one with the red ring on it is very interesting because it basically acts as a function or a shift key, giving every other button on here a different function. If you can see here, it says like 1080 and 900 and stuff around here. That is so that when you have this up, you can adjust on the fly your wheel rotation, and as well as some other things. So these dials down here will adjust your force feedback gain and your force feedback damper, and all of which you can do on the fly, which is very, very impressive. Say you want to hop into a wheel where into a car where you're a Formula 1 car or something, you only want 360 degrees of rotation. One switch, one button, you're good to go. So outside of the on-the-fly changes, you also have this software. So I was very impressed with the software. It came fully in English. It was very intuitive, self-explanatory. Did pretty much everything I wanted it to do. It has a lot of options. Some of them I'm still learning about. Some of them seem pretty straightforward, so I was able to tweak the settings to my liking without much difficulty. There's also some cool features in software, like if your wheel ever becomes off-centered, which happened to me once in my 2 weeks of testing. It's as simple as centering the wheel, clicking the center button in the software, and you're good to go there. The only other minor issue I had with it is one time after moving it, I came back, and when I would plug it in, it would do its quick calibration thing and then kind of spin off to one side and go when it ran into the end. But there's a reset button on the back of the base, so that was as simple as hitting the power switch, hitting the reset button, turning it off and on, it was good to go. That was actually the same time that it went off center, so again, reset button, power switch, center button in the software, and problems were fixed. So now let's get into the performance of this thing. So everyone, when you talk about direct drive wheels, all they want to know is how many newton meters of torque. You know, torque this, torque that. Is it 20? Is it 25? Well, a real car is pretty much never going to put out more than 10 newton meters. It's probably not going to put out more than 6 or 7 newton meters, even without power steering. But this unit is 10 newton meters, so in my testing that's been more than enough for everything I've wanted to drive. Even cranked up quite a bit, there's very little clipping. But torque isn't what's important to me. What was the big selling factor for me for a direct drive wheel is speed and responsiveness. And I'll post up an overlay here of just how fast this thing spins, and it's really quite impressive. Another thing about the performance is the silent operation of it. I know I've mentioned this before, but it just blows my mind how this thing is able to output those kind of forces without requiring any cooling whatsoever. And I can confirm this. Like I said, I've used it for hours on end and put my hand on the base, and it's cool to the touch. So they seem to be right about it not needing fans. So I'll report if anything changes with that, but so far very impressed. Now let's get into setup. So like I said, it took about 10 minutes. The box came with pretty much everything you needed. The only thing I could have asked for in the box that I didn't get was a North American power adapter. which wasn't a big deal. I purchased this one. So the plug here, as you can see, is looks almost like a North American plug, but it's slanted. So these are the plugs that we use here in North America, Canada, and the States. So I just had to pick one of these up. It didn't bother me too much because it also has all these other plugs on the top. So now I have a nice little charging port next to my rig. So really not complaining about that. Also, it's hard to show you when I take it off here, but all of these buttons also light up red. If you flick this up, then you can change the mode of the lights to pulse, to flash, whatever. I like just leaving them either all the way on or all the way off. But you could do whatever you want with that. So now let's get into the cons. So one of the cons is also kind of a pro, so price. If you're comparing it to a belt-driven wheel, I suppose it's a con because it is going to be a little more expensive. But if you're comparing it to every other direct drive wheel on the market, the price is actually extremely affordable. You get the full package with the quick release and the rim for cheaper than most direct drives sell just their base for. So it's hard to really fault and call that one a con. I'm gonna say overall the price is more of a pro than a con. One of the only other cons is you're gonna need a solid cockpit for it. I have a GT Omega Art cockpit, and if I really put some strain on it, this thing will flex up and down. It has no side-to-side flex whatsoever, and the up and down, I only really notice it when I'm looking back at wheel cam footage. While I'm actually playing with my Oculus Rift headset on, I don't really see it or feel it at all, so it doesn't really bother me. But I will be upgrading to a sturdier cockpit in the future, so stay tuned for that. Another small con is the software was occasionally finicky. There's certain sliders that you can only slide when the game is loaded, which works 90% of the time, but I think a lot of it is more user error. I'm learning how the software works as I go, and while it's pretty straightforward, there's a couple little things that could stand to be improved slightly, but the whole software is new. It's a work in progress. I'm sure a lot of those things will get ironed out in the future. Another small con is I did have to remap the buttons in the software in Content Manager a few times, which, if I'm honest, I think that was also more user error. I'm not entirely used to having a power switch on the base itself. None of my Thrustmasters had that. If it was plugged in, it was plugged in all the time, so it was just always on. This one, it has a nice little power switch, which I've set up conveniently within arm's reach, because I noticed a lot of the direct drive wheels have a kill switch. This one didn't come with that, but it does have the power switch, which is very easily accessible for me. I can reach over and click that, so that's just as good in my books. But the reason I believe that has something to do with me having to remap my controls is sometimes I'll launch Content Manager and realize I haven't turned on the base yet. So if you launch Content Manager without all of your devices connected, it can occasionally mess with your controls. So I think that was more the issue than anything to do with Simagic. I've had to remap controls with pretty much every wheelbase that I've had, so it's nothing particularly out of the ordinary. But that's gonna pretty much wrap up all of the cons. There wasn't a lot in my 2 weeks of using it that I would really change. The only thing I miss from my belt-driven wheel, like I mentioned in one of my other videos, is having a button on the base for teleporting back to pits. But really, logistically, I don't think that would work on a direct drive base anyway, because number one, they're quite a bit smaller, and number two, with the amount of force and speed that they put out, I wouldn't want to be sticking my hand around back there anyway, trying to reach around for a button, especially with the VR headset on and my vision blocked. I feel like that would be a injury waiting to happen, so not mad about that in the slightest. I've really enjoyed my experience with this thing so far. I primarily bought it for drifting, but I found it's actually kind of renewed my interest in grip driving. So you'll probably see some grip driving videos on the channel, because now that I have a wheel that really translates all of the nuances of the road into my hands, it really changed the experience of grip driving. So I've been enjoying that a lot, and probably going to do some more of that. So overall, I'm really happy with this thing. It's by far the best steering wheel and base combination that I've ever used, compared to every Thrustmaster, Logitech, and Fanatec, up to the V2.5, but not including the Podium series. I have not tried those, or AccuForce, or any other direct drive wheel. So I can only compare this against belt-driven wheels for now, and it blows every single one of those out of the water, no contest. So that's going to wrap up my review of the M10 from Simagic Dynamic. I've really enjoyed making this video, so if you guys liked hardware review style videos like this from me, please like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll continue to make more for you. This will not be my last video featuring the Simagic Dynamic wheel. I'll continue to test it on different sims and post the videos of that. So check those out. Thanks again for watching. Happy New Year. And this is Chris Wolf. Have a good one, guys.